Hello, my name is Demitta Plange, and I'm here with the National Youth and PENSA pastor, Pastor Richard Kwakye.
Hello.
Thank you for taking out the time to meet.
Pleasure.
This is our first official interview with you.
Sure.
Ideally, we would have wanted to do this a bit earlier, but obviously life circumstances, COVID, we've had to delay this a bit, but nonetheless, we're super excited to get to know you a bit more
Pleasure's
and
all
to
mine.
ask you a few questions.
Sure.
So firstly, I just want to touch on the pandemic, COVID. Obviously, that has impacted a lot of things that we were planning to do at church, and I'm sure it's impacted your vision for PENSA and for the youth ministry. So I just want to start off by asking you if this has made you realize anything, or is there anything that has changed because of COVID and that you are now looking to bring on into the youth ministry?
Sure. I think the pandemic hasn't actually been too much of a disaster on the vision itself.
Okay.
I actually think it's aligned and shaped the vision, which wasn't necessarily what I thought originally.
Okay.
It's allowed me to come to realize the generation that we are leading, and of course, the climate to which we are leading people. So, of course, having millennials, Generation Z, Generation Alpha, as they're known from 2010 onwards.
Right.
Of course, we've come to understand that they're digital natives. And as digital natives, COVID actually got them closer to the virtual world
Right, okay.
and all of those sort of things. So it's caused me to be quite a good observer over the course of the pandemic, to see exactly what's going on with our young people, to actually understand the differences between their social media personalities, their digital personalities, and actually the relational personalities they have outside of it, which actually allowed me to see the real essence of the vision and actually to shape the vision to the direction that would actually help the people that we're leading. So, yeah, that's what I would say really with regards to the pandemic and the vision.
Okay, so you've mentioned a lot of things about the vision. What is the vision?
Well, very good question. Of course, when we, me and the team, took over end of February 2020, we had quite a good time frame, about 2 months, to really seek God in where He's taken us. And in light of the overarching vision of possessing the nations across the world as Church Pentecost, God laid on our hearts transforming youth culture.
Okay.
Of course, culture is the bedrock to which most visions will flow forth. And so if we deal with culture, if we deal with the environment that people are, growing up in, being nurtured in, then we can actually more or less steer them towards possessing the nations.
Okay.
So the vision of the youth ministry is transforming your youth culture. This is the reason why we have transformers across most of our activities and tasks and projects, which I'm sure we're going to be talking about the Transformers Conference as we go ahead. But so that's really the vision at the moment, transforming youth culture.
Okay, and obviously you stepped into office just before-ish the pandemic. So
just at the mouth of it.
Okay, so would it be possible for us to get a status update on the vision of the church? I know you said it hasn't changed much and it's still in the direction of possessing the nations and everything, but could you give us an insight to what we can expect in the future?
Yes. So I think that's 2 questions in one.
Yeah.
I'll do my best with it. Of course, the Transforming Youth Culture agenda is a very large one, because we're in the United Kingdom, and we're also conscious of the demographics that we have in our church. So you do have a lot of migrant children who may have been born in the United Kingdom or come at a very young age or come from other countries across Europe. Now, with that, the Transforming Youth Culture vision actually starts inwardly, in that what does our culture look like within the church first?
Okay.
And then how do we transform the culture outside of the church? So the pandemic and its sort of lockdown measures sort of steered us towards doing the first part, which is transforming the inward culture.
Yeah.
And so during the pandemic, you would have seen a lot of goalpost moving when it came to issues of concern. We did a lot of clarity sessions, sort of getting our doctrines on point.
Yeah.
We try to strengthen the network and community within the church and within the youth ministry through some of our sports measures. And then we also engaged in some of the outward things that we didn't usually speak about or get involved with. So you saw we were involved when the India challenges were happening.
Yeah.
You saw that we were involved when we had the issue of George Floyd.
Yeah.
And, when the issues in Nigeria arose, we wrote to the ambassador, we put out open statements.
Okay.
We got involved with social responsibility-based things. So during the time, we've seen a lot of movement towards sorting ourselves out, strengthening the mesh of our community inside the church, and also taking some strides into some of those social spaces that we used to be silent about.
Yeah.
So that's really some of the goalposts that we've been able to sort of move in the last year.
Okay.
Of course, there may be other things that I haven't mentioned, but of course, a lot more that we can do going forward with the vision.
Okay, thank you. That's really exciting that you mentioned all the social things that you're doing, because that's something we're going to touch on a bit later. But before we get there, I just want to talk about PENSA a little bit. For anyone who doesn't know what PENSA is, do you want to just give a brief 2 sentences about it, what it is and all that stuff?
I'll struggle with 2 sentences. But yes, so PENSA stands for Pentecost Students and Associates. And with PENSA, it's some people think of PENSA as a UK thing. Of course, people that don't really have much of a understanding of the Church of Pentecost. But PENSA actually originated from Ghana in the Church of Pentecost. And it dates back to university students going to uni and somehow losing touch with their local churches. And so with that, the church looked to cater for them spiritually and holistically, actually, and then also ensure that there is a good space for them when they come back to actually move the goalposts in the churches as well. And at the same time, create a conveyor belt of leadership. So when we started PENSA here in the United Kingdom, probably mid to the end of the 2000s. So we're talking about 2005 to about 2010. Okay. There was some beginning work in 2006, and then it came into about 2010, 2011. And then the church, through the leadership of our national head, intensified that in 2017. So our job was, and of course I was the first PENSA traveling minister, so my job was to mobilize our students, cater for them while they're in university spiritually, connect them to the church, grow them in doctrine, so that we as a church will continue to have a conveyor belt of leadership in our future, but also give them space to be able to move so that when they do come back, they can be very useful to the church and, of course, community at large. So that's what PENSA is about. And by God's grace, we have 37 PENSAs now, which we're very proud of, from very humble beginnings.
That's great.
And long may it continue.
Great. Okay. And how does PENSA fit into the overall vision of the youth ministry?
Yes. So, funny enough, I was talking to someone about this afternoon. So the overarching vision of the youth ministry, transforming youth culture, has 3 strands, and they're age-specific strands. So the teenagers have been tasked with the objective of setting Christ-based trends, because we know that peer pressure is the biggest issue that teenagers face. Now, if that phase is dealt with very well, then the idea is that we will then have young people who are strong, who aren't just followers, who would then become PENSA leaders.
Yeah.
So at the PENSA stage, our vision or objective is to create messengers, right? Okay. So when you're at that stage, the expectation is that you have a message that has been embedded on your heart. It's literally been pushed into you at that teenage years.
Yeah.
And at university, you now become a proclaimer of a message. You can't keep it quiet. It's like fire in your mouth. So they would then connect all of the students that they have on campus, anyone they can reach, get this message embedded in them as well. So that when they come out, they're not just academic robots or some sort of mechanical engines that just know what they've learned in uni.
Yeah.
But they're very holistic. They're very Christian, but at the same time, very sharp in competency.
All right, thank you. And obviously, we all know you're not a student forever. So what happens with the students who graduate from university, these messengers, what do they do afterwards? Is there anything that is in place for the students who are now graduates who don't have a COP at home or a church? Like, what is PENSA doing about that? Yeah,
so actually, this is where the merger between the Youth and PENSA Ministry comes in. Because PENSA, of course, is a student wing. And it being a student wing, of course, there are alumni involved. But this is the reason why, as part of the vision overall, we have Messengers Phase 1 and Phase 2. So Messengers Phase 1 is PENSA. And perhaps when you come out of university for the first time, and then maybe the second year. Then you have Messengers Phase 2, which is the young adults phase. And at this particular point, we are focusing on growing and developing those that have come out of uni, trying to maybe put them in the deep end a little bit, give them things that they may not necessarily be comfortable with, but actually use that to stretch their capacity so that they have a good elasticity of leadership about them. So if you're looking for deacon or elder or deaconess, you're looking for it in that Messengers Phase 2 pack. So that's our focus as a Youth and PENSA Ministry, because the PENSA Ministry have worked with them at that PENSA stage, and the Youth Ministry, in communication with PENSA, because it's the same family, can then pick up from when the PENSA Ministry is left off to complete that process. So when they're 35 and they're no longer classed as Youth Ministry, they can be used for wherever the church needs. So that's the plan. All right, thank you. And I'm aware that there are some PENSA churches. Do you plan on opening any more? Are there going to be some more? Is that something that's not happening anymore? What's the update with that? Yeah, I mean, they're definitely there. They're happening as I speak. The one thing I will say about them was that they were never an ends-based project. They were problem-solving projects. So we only start PENSA churches where there are no COP churches or community churches, or there are COP or community churches, but they're homogenous. So they are maybe tree-speaking or something like that. So we did have PENSA church. We've always had a PENSA church in Dundee, but PENSA Essex, for example, started because of that. So we then had that. And then we had PENSA ARU in Cambridge because there's no church in Cambridge. And we've got the same in PENSA Portsmouth because the distance between the church and the students was too far. So that's why we did that. So it's not something that we are doing strategically just to have PENSA churches, but it's actually to solve a problem. And because some of those problems still exist, we do have them. And they're functioning very well and meeting the need that we needed to. So should more problems arise, there will be more PENSA churches? We pray there aren't problems arising, because of course it does stretch us at the PENSA level and eats up our resources. Not that we have a problem with those resources being eaten, but we're hoping that there aren't problems that, but if it does, then PENSA churches are there at least as a strategy. We have the option to choose to solve those problems. Thank you. So I want to talk about Transformers 22. So we're all super excited about that. Could you just give us like a brief sort of snapshot of what Transformers 22 is or is going to be? I believe that it will be a lot more than I say it's going to be. Which is, I guess, the exciting thing for me, that sort of anticipation of the unknown. But of course, the Transformers 22 is right at the heart of our vision of transforming youth culture, hence the name change. We firmly believe that Breakout 19, God was calling us as a church, as young people, to come out of our comfort zones. And what do we do now we've come out of our comfort zones? We need to transform. We need to do something to transform society, transform our culture, transform our peers. So Transformers 22 isn't just an event, neither is it just an experience. Transformers 22 is designed to enforce the vision of transforming youth culture. So it would have deposits of that, it would have indicators of that, but it would also have a sort of direction about it, in that everybody that signs up to Transformers 22 should expect some sort of transformation. That isn't just a spiritual experience or encounter. but actually a holistic thing
Yeah.
that they can leave with. Maybe I'll say that for now, just so we're not killing all the questions.
It's fine. Okay, so you've mentioned holistic change and everything that is great about Transformers 22, but why should, really like blatantly, why should we attend?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And of course, that's that so what moment
Yeah.
when it comes to these things. Why should we attend? It's because it's not an experience you're coming to.
Okay.
You're coming to your change. There is a personalized approach to Transformers 22. For the first time, goal setting will be the very, very beginning of it. Before you even attend, you will set your own goals and submit it so that Transformers 22 would have a tailored approach to everyone attending.
Okay.
So your understanding, it's just like when you sign up to a conference or a workshop, there are particular goals that you're trying to achieve. And we want, I guess this is where we will get the young adults to come in, you know, because you're coming in there for something that would be a transformation in your own life. So Transformers 22 is actually transforming me 22.
Okay.
And that's really what we're trying to go for. So that's why you should attend, because it's for you and you and you and you and you.
Okay.
It's an individualized thing.
Thanks. So you've mentioned goal setting.
Yeah.
I think that's super important for somebody who is probably like, obviously it's important for everyone, but probably more so important to young adults rather than youth. So I was actually going to ask, why should young adults attend? But you've kind of, your answers kind of made me think, why should youth attend? Because I think youth camp or a youth conference is very like exciting, and goal setting is obviously super fun, but like not the most exciting thing. So what is in it for youth and not the young adults, just for now?
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
The Transformers 22 is not changing our youth conference, right? So our youth conference is still our conference.
Yeah.
It will still have all of those facets that we love about youth conference. It will still have all of the euphoria. But in addition to all of that euphoria, there must be something explicitly planned about it, even for our teenagers.
Yeah.
Because one of the biggest issues we have in society at the moment, and even in our church, is that our teenagers don't always have principles that they live by. Wishy-washy, we go with whatever is current, right? And so with this particular experience, we want our young people to come because they will have all of the euphoria moments. They'll have all their spiritual encounters. They will be rich in depth in all of that. But they will also see what their adult self looks like.
Okay.
Right? If not even in the face of those who will be attending who are a lot older, in the face of their own goals that they will set, or some of the directions that will be moving them intentionally within that conference. So it's not a youth conference anymore. It's Transformers Conference. And it's transforming in every sense of the word for everybody that walks into the building.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll go into this in a bit more depth later on.
Sure.
But I just want to talk about, obviously, the fact that we don't want to be a ministry that's drifting. So how do you think Transformers 22 is going to ensure, or at least help, that we are not drifting and we're staying on track and keeping in line with the vision that you have?
Yeah, I mean, that's where leadership comes in. The measure leadership must be strong and in control, so that we aren't sort of just going with the wind in everything that we're doing. And this is the reason why a lot of our work has been, aside sort of bringing some creativity to the table, looking at structures. It's of course, as part of the Possessing the Nations agenda, there is a leeway to realign structures. And that's exactly what we've done within the youth ministry, to realign our structures. So it's literally down at the grassroots level all the way up. The message is consistent and the expectations are consistent, so that we all know exactly where we're going and what is required of everyone in that chain. So I firmly believe that as long as leadership remains strong and focused on the direction we're all going in and keep that communication consistent, I firmly believe that a drift won't be a part of our ministry.
Okay, how do you plan on keeping that communication consistent?
Well, it's the word consistency.
Okay.
Right. These things are broken down into tasks.
Yeah.
Of course, we've brought in some more leaders on board. We've brought in different layers. And the main thing is keeping communication strands going, review and previewing things. So, we preview this is where we want to go, and then review how it's going. That way, if it's bending at any point, then we can straighten it. Doesn't mean it won't bend, but of course, if it's bending, then we can realign ourselves back to where we should be. So that's really what we're working hard to do at that level.
The last time I went to Church of Pentecost Youth Camp was a while ago, and it was great, it was fun, it was enjoyable. I just want to know, what is your message to young adults who feel like obviously youth camp or Transformers 22 is a thing of the past? What intrigues young adults to be there?
Yeah, and I think that's a very key question. I think sometimes history can serve as an eliminator sometimes, and that the nucleus of your question kind of leads on to that. But in this particular case, history should be used to serve a purpose of actually, where is this thing going? If conferences in itself are not outdated for young adults, then this should be seen as that. Because, I mean, even as a married person, I know that people go on marriage retreats and marriage conferences, and you never stop learning, you never stop growing in whatever phase of life you're in. So this should be seen. I think our intention actually about Transformers 22 being sitting on top of what we've already done, but actually being completely different, is the fact that, one, we've changed the name and we've changed the venue. And the venue in itself, as well as the environment we're doing it in, and the choice of place we're going to, actually states the intention very clearly. Because, you're moving from youth hostels and university accommodations to hotels. And so there's little things that we have done to make that statement of intent and actually the change of purpose very clear. That this is a conference. It's no longer called a youth conference for a reason. It's no longer called a youth camp where you camp out for a reason. This is a conference like you would find anywhere out there that you may choose to go to yourself for growth purposes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So that's really, I mean, of course, you can't convince everybody. But that is definitely something that we are going to ensure is executed. And we hope that people see our intention and actually buy into that and not make decisions based on a phase they once were in. And that's what I would say to that.
Okay, thank you so much. So we hear a lot about how in COP UK there are no men in the church. And obviously this is a problem because it means that there are very little or fewer male leaders in the church. As well as this, it means that it may be a concern that there are no men of marriage material. And if there are fewer men in the church, it's going to mean that there are no men to raise the boys in Sunday school or the youth that are growing up. I just want to firstly ask how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the nucleus of that question, I partly agree and partly disagree with. And maybe that would be my starting point. It's a lot of the time when we state that, it's commensurate to the men's ministry and the women's ministry. And we see that the women's ministry is a lot more vibrant, and Deaconess Monica Plange, of course, your mum, is doing a great job with that. And of course, the men's ministry has always struggled, because men are always sort of lagging behind in terms of when we're serious about things. And sometimes that kind of translates into there aren't any men in the church. I guess that's a question you can actually pose societally, in that we have the same issues societally. Even when you go into schools, women perform a lot better than men. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a lack of the existence of men or the numbers. They're there. They may not be processed as well as they should be. And of course, that is something that we all need to look at. My view on that is, yes, there is a part truth in there, in that I find that a lot of our young ladies are very much ambitious. A lot of them are serving in various capacities than perhaps I would like my men to be. But I do also know that when the men come through, they come through very well. And so it's more of a question on us as leaders. How do we process our men so that there's a good process of maturation and actually our men are enthusiastic about moving the goalpost? We should have the same passion about society, because our increase in crime and all of those things is as a result of this same question that you're posing. So it's not just a question for us, a question for Boris Johnson, it's a question for everyone.
Okay.
But I think we all need to put our hands in the plow and look at how we can pull our men to mature quicker or to take up responsibility quicker. I think that the ladies are also very, very important here, because when men see ladies as maybe, I won't say looking down on them, but actually the ladies are far gone, far gone. Sometimes that's a good kick for them as well. So we should continue working on our ladies while working on our men, and our ladies will give our men the kick as well to actually bring them through. But it's something that none of us, people can make loads of money if they knew the secret to some of these things, but we trust on the Holy Spirit, we trust on God to bring that process to bear. And I think we'll get there, most certainly. Okay,
thank you. And just to address the part truth in what you believe I've just said, how can you encourage the young male adults in the church?
Yeah, encouragement is a very interesting thing, right? Because sometimes men try to act like, we don't like encouragement, we don't like an arm around us and that sort of thing. Sometimes men need a real shaking. Understand where society is going. Understand that our ladies are sometimes even the definition of manhood is being lost because we don't know what being a man is. So we need to be encouraged to go back and look at men in scripture, look at men in society. What do we stand for? We're robust, we're protectors, we're providers. If we don't start now in building that capacity in us now, we're not going to have a crash course to do that when we're in our mid-20s or in our late 30s or early 30s. And so for the men, wherever you are, and maybe I'm talking to camera here, wherever you are, it's very, very important that you grow up today, that you look at taking up responsibility today. Look at investing in yourself so that you become holistic as a person. And this is where I guess Transformers 22 comes in, because we're catering for this sort of holistic man as well. Work on yourself, invest in yourself, read books, do all of these things so that you're not lost in that family setup in the future. That's what I'll say to that, Demitta.
Thank you. So would you say that Transformers 22 is the support that is available for the young men and women in the church?
I'm cautious of using the word support because support has a long-term nature and people are not just supported in a 5-day, 6-day period. So I'll be more inclined to say it's the vehicle to carry our men or propel our men to their God-given purpose and who they're supposed to be.
Okay, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. So since that isn't the support available, what is the support available for the young men and women?
I think the support available should be as it always has been in history. Society has always been supported by churches. We look at the early 4th century, it was the church that held up the state. And so I believe that a lot of the resource shouldn't be embedded on just an event or a conference that's happening within a time frame. But actually the pillars and support systems must be placed inside the church so that there is that familiar go-to that men have each and every time. Of course, not just men, young adults, but of course our ladies as well in every phase.
So there's a rise of feminism in our culture and women empowerment. This is obviously translated in the church and with the women in the church. What is your view on that as they move further away from the traditional biblical woman?
Yeah, anything that moves away from the biblical standards is a threat. And for me, of course, feminism in itself is a notion, a theory, concept, whatever it may be seen to other people, perceived to other people. My issue with people moving the goalposts away from the biblical standards is how self-oriented it moves us. God himself is triune, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And sometimes, especially in a Western society where the self is paramount, my thoughts are that it moves us away from our biblical image, not even in our relationships with each other socially, but actually in our identity as a person, because we are interdependent beings. We've been created by default as interdependent beings. So I believe it is a threat to the church, because it moves us away from who we actually are and who we're designed to be, but also the manual that grants us the instruction to walk into our purpose as a man, as a woman, you know. So my thoughts will be in that arena. And I think the church needs to look at keeping us as close as possible to that sort of arena by enforcing the biblical standards. The more we enforce the biblical standards, the more we teach the biblical standards, it becomes part and parcel of our language, and we then gain fluency in understanding those sort of principles. Again, I keep talking about principles because that's what we're lacking in our generation. We need principles, we need values, personal ones and corporate ones. And if we pick up these values, then that self-oriented thing would be unnatural to us. I think the church needs to hit that really on its head so that our people come to really understand it at a core level.
Okay, thank you. So what structures do you think are available or will be available soon to really hit that nail on the head?
Okay, so as I was talking about the vision of the youth ministry, you found that I was talking about Messengers Phase 1 and Messengers Phase 2. At the Phase 1, Phase 2 level, by God's grace, the Lord, through the Youth and Women's Ministry, birthed the Virtuous Ladies Ministry, which is what originated in our headquarters in Ghana. And by God's grace, I believe this year we were able to launch that project via the women's ministry. And with those sorts of processes, I know the men's ministry also looking at something similar. So the youth ministry can focus solely on young adults, strengthening young adults, solidifying and fortifying them, while some of those sort of gender-based issues can then be dealt with in a tailor-made way within the women's ministry and the men's ministry streams. And I think that tailored, because these are gender-based ministries anyway, they're well equipped to help with some of those focused elements of our lives. And I think that if we strengthen and fortify those pillars, we're really on the way.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to talk about yourself and your family life and your life and all those fun things. You're the first youth pastor who's actually a youth. How does it feel to be a youth leading a youth ministry?
Oh, interesting question. I didn't see that one coming at all. How does it feel? I believe I have a heightened sense of burden because I know exactly what it's like to be under a youth ministry, under leadership, living in this climate, in this environment, having grown up, doing all the levels, nursery, primary school, secondary school, sixth form, university in this United Kingdom. And so I know what it feels like. And for that reason, I have a heightened sense of a burden for this generation. Of course, I'm now getting used to being older than people.
Yeah.
And of course, that sort of what I like to call the incarnation is what is really helping me, pushing me along to get certain things done, because I know what it's really solving at that ground level when you are a young person. I guess sometimes it gets me frustrated as well, being a young person, because you really want them to get there, and sometimes you want to push people, but you then have to sort of give yourself that sort of calm and say, look, let them go through process just like you went through process. So how it feels, I would say the response to that is a real big burden to see change.
Right, okay, thank you. And since you took over, it's been about a year and a half now. Since you took over, what has gone well and not so well?
Okay. All right, these are all the hard questions that are coming now, isn't it? Okay. What has gone well? I would probably cite the fact that we've been successful in laying down the structures that are good sort of shoulders for the vision. We've been able to resource people. I suppose maybe knowing that people also have different sorts of things that they're doing. Maybe what hasn't always gone well is getting people exactly when you need them. And of course, as I said, I have a heightened sense of a burden. So one of the weaknesses of that is that you want to get certain things done quickly.
Yeah.
And then that kind of makes you step back and say, no, actually, it's going to maybe take a bit longer than, you first thought. So, let it go through process, that sort of thing. So it's gone well in that the pillars are all in place, the structure's in place, the vision is understood, it's communicated, and people are working with it. And of course, there have been some growth, even within lockdown, people are connected still.
Yeah.
And, people do tap in, but you really want things to move quicker.
Yeah.
And I guess that's just something that will come with time.
Okay, thank you. And you're a father of 4. Must be so exciting. Husband and everything of that sort. How are you balancing it all?
Yeah. Am I balancing it all? Is the
Seems like
question.
you are.
No, I mean, we're of course doing, for me, I'm a firm believer in taking up every responsibility that's assigned to you. You look at Jesus himself and the fact that he was the Son of God. He had a father, but he was also the leader of the disciples. He also had the mission of being the savior. And so there's this multi-dimensional element to Jesus. And in fact, many of them, Paul, for example, was a tent maker as well as an apostle, So I've always seen myself as a multi-dimensional person who does his very best with every responsibility that's assigned to him. And of course, God first, family second, church next. And so my family is the overriding priority to me. My kids are. I don't outsource my parenting to anybody. I don't play with my wife. These are my responsibility. These are my treasures, and I'm a steward of them. So I ensure that I do my very best there. But I also have a calling, and my calling, Bible says, make your calling and election sure. So I ensure that my calling doesn't have loopholes in there as well. I delegate where I need to ensure that things still get done, even if my hand is in a different pot.
Yeah.
So that balancing is coming from a concept of teamwork, delegation, prioritization. All of these elements are principles that help me in that pursuit.
Thank you. I really love that. So for young people, how, obviously I'm sure as you know in this generation, everyone's doing everything like uni, balancing businesses and all that stuff. You obviously balance 3, maybe even more, really tough sort of areas in your life. What is your advice to young people in terms of how can we emulate you in the way that you emulate Christ?
Yeah, I think one thing I've noticed about my generation, or even the generations younger than me, Z and Alpha, is that, of course, embedded in the culture is self. And sometimes you only tap into the things that you think is giving you personal benefit. And then actually you forsake responsibility to others. So we're not very charitable generation.
Yeah.
We're very much take. And my advice is that isn't actually the godly principle. We are designed to be multidimensional. We are designed to be fathers and husbands, but also be that person in the law, be that person in the medical field, and also be that person in the church. I was having a conversation this week about the fact that I'm used to being, the district youth leader and also area organizer and national. We were used to those things and given our all to it, but this generation isn't always like that. And I believe that just like at work, when you want a promotion or you want to sort of climb up the ladder, you prove your competency for additional responsibility. We should have that same thinking when it comes to the house of God and every dimension of us. How do we stretch us? Your capacity doesn't just enhance, who you are. Your competency doesn't just get enlarged. It comes with being stretched, and we don't want to be stretched. So we need to give ourselves this attitude of the heart and the mind that we're ready to be stretched. Then we will have the competency required to be able to fulfill every single mandate. You would see that you will build a legacy when you become that sort of person. Just like it's rewarded at work, the Lord always rewards.
Amen. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, and lastly, how can young people help you and support you in pushing your vision forward?
Wow, that's a very big one. I firmly believe that this vision isn't my vision anyway. This vision is carved out of the overarching vision of the chairman and the International Executive Council of Possessing the Nations, which is why transforming youth culture makes sense, as we're trying to build agents of transformation under that vision. And so how can young people support the vision of transforming youth culture? One, they'll be supporting the overarching vision of God for the church. But also, if young people are interested in fulfilling their own callings, then they will support the ministry, because the vision has been carved out of the one where God wants to take us. And because God always prepares his people before he brings his vision and dispatches us, that means that with everyone's calling, if we're focused on making our calling and election sure as young people, then we will automatically be fulfilling the vision of transforming the youth culture and possessing the nations. So I think that young people should come on board, not because they're coming to support Pastor Richard or support Apostle Eric Nyamiche or Apostle Friye, or not at all, but actually because they're fulfilling their own assignments and callings. And in that, the glory of God can then be seen as we all do our part.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
Thank you. So how does that look like practically? How can they practically help? Like, what steps can be taken for anyone who really wants to get involved and they've decided, I'm actually going to do this?
Yeah. I mean, the source of all things is communication. We are, if you look at the streams and levels and structures that we've put in place, they've been put in place wrapped around people's callings, So you've got sports, you've got creativity, you've got social influence, you've got all sorts of things. And we want people to come and talk to us about where God is leading them. And we then look at what that looks like in the vision and ensure that they can come on board to contribute what God has called them to do anyway, but actually help it to move the ship, So the source of all things is communication. Speak to us, speak to leaders at all levels, bring your calling on board, and we will always create room, because for God to lay it on your heart, that means that God is preparing you for something that is bigger. Yeah, so we're here to facilitate that. That's what I would say.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just want to take the time to thank you for sitting down to do this interview with us.
Pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you very much. That's right. Thank you. Perfecto.